Welcome back, and thanks for joining us again on episode 115 of the Social Liability Podcast, the only podcast where two men bitch and moan about the people in our lives that refuse to adhere to the social contract that we all agree to live by. I am your host, The Buck, with our co host, The Raz, and joining us for this week's episode is the hero of last week, our good friend, Blue Duck Gold Duck, or for all intents and purposes, Duck. So we've got Buck, Raz, and Duck. Buck,
Yeah.
Raz, and Duck. Just proves that a dick always belongs between two nuts, wouldn't you say?
No, I just think that you guys.
Wait, I'm the one in the middle.
Well, for video purposes, he's in the middle, yeah. But my point is, did you guys conspire? Because I had such a hard time saying duck for the last two episodes instead of buck, and now I got to deal with both of you on the same episode. I'm gonna.
Well, if it makes it easier, you can call me Buck Grundle, and you can be Duck Grundle.
No, that does not make things easier. That just complicates them even more. Oh, jeez. Well, yeah. So, for those of you that are not aware, Duck and I are actually, we had a podcast originally, and it was all, it was called the Mount Moon Review. It was all Pokemon based. Oddly enough, I know it's not really anything to do with this kind of podcast, but then Buck and I started our podcast, and then the global situation occurred, and we had no content for the other podcast, and then Duck had to go get a big boy job where he was working. The most bizarre schedule, worse than anything I ever did when I worked for the fire department. So that one kind of fell off, but the whole podcasting adventure kind of started with Duck. It was Duck's idea to start a podcast, and ever since then we've been doing it since. Now this is what I've been doing podcasting consistently now for 3-4 years, something like that.
Yeah, probably. I think it was Sword and Shield wasn't out yet.
Yeah, so that was quite a while back, and I've been going ever since.
You and I are going to be coming up on our 2-year anniversary in June.
Yeah, the Social Liability Podcast has been going strong for quite a while. We also had a YouTube show where Duck was involved called the Untitled Anime Show, and that didn't really go too far. That kind of fizzled out pretty quick. But it's you play around, you try it works. And I think the moral of this little tale of intrigue and suspense is, don't be afraid to try new things. There's a learning curve, and once you figure it out, it can be a lot of fun, and it keeps you sane. It keeps Buck sane anyway. Well, there's reasonable facsimile.
Close to sane as could possibly be, And cheese is arguably slipping off my cracker regardless, but this definitely helped.
Right on. Well, let's start out with a story from Yahoo News. Rattlesnake handler dies, quote, doing what he loved after being bitten during Texas show. A veteran rattlesnake handler died Saturday, April 30th, hours after a snake bit him during a show. Eugene D. Leon Sr., I want to say that with a Creole accent, but I'm not going to, was bitten on the shoulder during the Rattlesnake Roundup event in Freer. Police told KII-TV he was flown to the Corpus Christi Hospital where he died. Organizers of the Kendall County Fair Association said De Leon died doing what he loved, being with the rattlesnakes. I bet you in those last moments he didn't really care for rattlesnakes all that much. Rattlesnake Roundup is put on by the Freer Chamber of Commerce, which mourned De Leon's death in a post on Facebook. The love and dedication he displayed for his community was witnessed every day, for being a member of the Freer Volunteer Fire Department to being a call away for local residents to assist with removing snakes from their property. He was always ready to help. He was never forgot his excitement during Roundup time. From doing interviews with TV stations to appearing on local televised wildlife shows, he did it all. His sister said De Leon had a passion for snake handling and handled rattlers for many years. He was well loved by those who knew him, added U.S. congressional candidate Sandra Whitman. My family and I enjoyed watching him handle these deadly snakes with ease, almost like he had simply danced with them. He had a smile on his face and clearly joy in his heart. Freer is in southern Texas, about 110 miles south of San Antonio. And like every picture, it looks like it's taken at a county fair. Every picture they have of this guy, of him kissing rattlesnakes and like holding them up near his face. And I have to imagine that, this was an inevitability. It's not a matter if you get bit, it's when.
I have to agree with that, but as far as, I want to start off just by saying, as far as the score goes, I'm not even going to give this guy a score, in my opinion, just because this is a perfect example of somebody living their best and happiest life. So what? He's got a very risky and dangerous, hobby that he obviously he's put a lot of time and stock into doing responsibly, and this is an accident. I mean, it would be no different if Evil Knievel, I mean, look at all the accidents he ever had. What if he just went down in a flaming cartwheel of death? It's people being reckless. Well, and
let me ask you this,
guy.
Buck. Let me ask you this, since you are probably the authority on this, at least between the three of us. With the manner in which he met his demise, would life insurance actually pay out in any way, shape, or form?
See,
it's endangering himself. He's engaging in dangerous activity. A lot of times, insurance companies won't cover those activities.
Now, see, that's an area where you would have to, like, I don't think that, as a matter of fact, I can say with a good degree of certainty that companies like John Hancock and Prudential, MetLife, probably not. But I can say that there are insurance policies, and companies that do high risk, cases like this. You can actually, like, it's a little off topic, but like, look at Fabio's face. That actually had an insurance policy.
That was through
was
through Lloyd's of London's, wasn't it?
Lloyd's of London.
Yeah, see,
so you can privately insure certain things. I'm just not exactly, I did do insurance for a minute, but not that. That's like PhD level insurance.
So, Duck, would you equate any kind of if you put this on a scale of 1 to 10 with danger? Obviously, this is going to be a pretty high. Where do you score duck handling?
Oh. Duck handling?
And would he have been better off duck handling than rattlesnake handling?
Well, you see, ducks like to travel in groups. So if you're trying to handle a group of ducks, you could easily get overwhelmed and overpowered.
Venom.
But if it's just one duck,
But what if it's a horse-sized duck?
Would you rather
Venom.
Would you rather fight a duck-sized snake or a snake-sized duck?
Neither.
See, that's the thing. Like, my motto has always been, and I was showing you my my hairy wiener before the show started, before we started recording. Docs and Fos, don't get your heads out of the gutter. My theory has always been, or with pets and animals that you keep in your house and such, that you never have one that you can't take in a fight.
That's a good policy.
Never have a pet you can't take in a fight.
Sage advice, Raz. Sage advice.
That's why Buck has chihuahuas and Duck has ducks.
Yeah.
Have you got another duck yet?
No.
Oh, you need to get more ducks.
Do you actually have a duck?
I did.
He kept them in a bathtub.
They tried to burn my house down, and I
Okay, wait a minute. No, wait. Stop. Okay, I'm just gonna wait. The next story is on hold. Duck, please regale us the story of the arsonist duck.
Yeah. Foul play. Let's hear it.
It was foul play. Okay, so I got the crazy idea in my head that I had an unusable bathroom or bathtub in my house, and I was at like Tractor Supply or a hardware store like that getting like dog food, and they had ducks for like $3 a duck. So I bought feed, I bought water, like all the equipment and a heating lamp, and put like wood shavings in the bottom of this bathtub, and raised the ducks in there. The issue is the ducks were already too old to like socialize, so they were just afraid of me.
You had feral ducks.
Yeah, and I didn't anticipate the smell as bad as it was. And then one day I come home and my house smells like garlic bread. It's just super weird, right? You're like, oh, somebody must have just made garlic bread. But what it actually was the ducks got big enough to jump out of the bathtub, and they knocked their heating lamp down, and the heating lamp fell and got hooked onto the handle of the bathtub, which just melted it. And apparently, like, whatever plastic that was made out of, it smelled like butter when it melted. And then
Duck.
I decided it wasn't safe to keep them in the house with the heating lamp, so I let them go.
Wait a minute, you just let them go?
Well, I took them there. I lived in a pretty like wetland area, and I let them go in one of the wetlands. But I dumped out the whole bag of food for them too, so they could eat that while they figured out how to survive off of the land. That was my thought process.
I just want to point this out. Duck was much younger then.
I was like 6 years ago.
Duck, you get a social liability score of a 2.
That's fair.
This is better than any story that we could have fucking read off the internet, man.
I'm guilty about it, okay? I don't know what happened to them. I like to imagine that they're flourishing.
You know,
They have.
I was okay. You guys, I'm gonna talk about local stuff, and no one's listening to this damn show is gonna get it, but you guys will. In Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, there is a McDonald's on the main street, and if you go to this McDonald's, it has the weirdest drive-through you've ever seen. You actually have to drive through the parking lot and weave through the parking lot as part of the drive-through. And one of the things that's really difficult is there's always cars there because there's always a gaggle of ducks and geese. And there was one day I was trying to just park and chill for a minute, and there was a duckling and a gosling that somebody literally dumped out of their car. You could tell it was like we got them for Easter. These will be great. And well, they didn't want them anymore. So they literally pulled up, threw them out of the car, and drove away. Well, these were domesticated. They weren't wild. So my stupid ass says, hey, I'm going to pick those two up and take them home. and I kept them for quite a while. They were named Affleck and Peo. Affleck was the goose, oddly enough, but he was the white one. So, and once they were big enough, they still didn't want to fly away because they had food. They were content. I kept them outside in a big run, just trying to like, hey, it's time to go, guys, go. The damn things wouldn't leave. They would like run from you. They didn't want you to do anything with them. But if you picked one up, the other one would follow behind because they didn't want to be separated. And I think that's part of what it was. Is they were so, what's the word I'm looking for? Imprinted on each other. They didn't want anything. They didn't want to be apart. So I eventually took them to a wildlife sanctuary in Fairfield, Pennsylvania, and they had a pond there where they kept like the alpacas and stuff, and they said, yeah, throw them in the pond. So that's where they went to live. At least I was a little bit responsible.
I was about ready to say.
I would also.
So you responsibly, rehomed your avian allies, as opposed to just
here's a bucket of food. Good luck, fuckers.
Well, I mean, like, in the sink or swim mentality, I can understand why you think a duck would be just fine. It's not gonna sink.
It's not good. That's exactly what it. As long as there wasn't a predator.
A duck's obituary never says it drowned.
But see, Duck, that only applies to water. that sink or swim mentality, literally in real life. Rock, not so much. Duck, good chance to swim. You know, when we're duck.
Well, you don't want to know what I did to my pet rocks. Just kidding.
I kind of do.
No,
I'll be honest.
I never had a pet rock.
I mean, how honest I kind of do.
They're in the water.
Is this something that we would find in the police blotter?
They're in the
You
water.
know?
He drowned them. He put them in a sack and threw them in a river.
Duck is the only, to dispose of rocks using cement shoes. Yes.
Jeez.
Can I also add that, like, I grew up on a farm and I, like, socialized chickens and, like, imprinted them. And I even had a guinea hen that would fly around and, like, land on my shoulder and on my arm. So it wasn't the first time I tried to take care of birds. I did not have the facilities to do this.
I was about ready to say,
You kept them in a bathtub.
Yeah, you're impressive.
Yeah, keeping them outside wasn't an option.
Dude,
Your
Green Acres upbringing, as impressive as it may be, does not negate the fact that you thought raising ducks in a bathtub was an appropriate idea.
Yeah.
So, at the end of the day, all jokes aside, at least all's well that ends well. I'm sure that there was a lesson somewhere in there that you took away from that. And, I'm so grateful that after so much time, we cover social liabilities all the time, and it's supposed to be a funny and upbeat and wonderful show, and we always end up covering like real douchebags and skells. And here we've had a social liability in real life here in the Mount Moon Crew. And in all fairness, I just don't have a story that would be as funny as raising ducks in a bathtub, but I can assure you that I've stuck my foot in a bunch of shit myself as far as social liabilities go. So, duck, don't let me beat you up too bad. I've got a shit sandwich or two that I could eat myself. Just not burning down my house with frickin' ducks. That's just awesome.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. That's what that was.